Hey there again, hope you're doing well.
Losing your home is just, well, it's a gut punch, isn't it?
Absolutely devastating.
And then imagine losing it while also facing, a really serious illness. It's that kind of 1-2 punch. They could just knock anyone flat. But what happens when, instead of giving in, a couple decides, okay, let's strap on backpacks and walk 630 miles along the Southwest Coast path?
It's pretty incredible.
With basically just a tent and, well, sheer determination. So, okay, let's unpack this extraordinary journey, the one at the heart of the Salt Path.
Yeah, and this deep dive is really all about understanding that incredible true story, Raynor Winn's memoir, and how it's now been adapted into a film.
Right.
And we've got some really fascinating insights here. They come from a Q&A with Raynor herself and also the film's director, Marianne Elliott, the screenwriter, Rebecca Lenkiewicz, and Jason Isaacs, the actor who plays Moth, Raynor's husband.
Okay, so insights on the source, really. And what is it about this story that just sticks with you long after you've finished the book or heard about it?
Well, I think it's more than just overcoming hardship, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it. It's about the unexpected ways we find strength, maybe, and connection when everything else is just stripped away.
Exactly.
So we're going to explore how this, deeply personal and physically demanding experience was translated onto the screen.
And also look at how the raw power of nature and sometimes just the surprising kindness of strangers became absolute lifelines for them.
You were at that Q&A. What really struck you about how this whole story even began, the genesis of it?
Well, what's quite remarkable, really, is how it almost started by accident. Raynor initially wrote The Salt Path purely for Moth.
It's just for him.
Just for him. After they lost their home and he got that really difficult diagnosis, she wanted to create something tangible for him, a way to hold on to the memories of their walk.
Wow.
It was only ever meant to be a short personal account, something he could read in their tent each evening, relive those intense moments and talk about them.
That's just such an intimate act, isn't it? Creating this record just for each other, processing this huge life shift, in their tent each night. It's like the ultimate keepsake.
It really is. And her initial ambitions for it were, well, very down to earth. She pictured a short book, maybe, she said, even a small film.
Yeah.
Just capturing this, distinct chapter.
Right.
It was actually their daughter who saw the bigger picture, the wider resonance, and really pushed Raynor to think about publication.
From a private memoir, read aloud in a tent, to a best-selling book, and now a film that's quite a journey in itself.
It really is.
And it sounds like adapting it for the screen was also quite a personal thing for the team involved.
Yeah.
The screenwriter, Rebecca Lenkiewicz, she had a strong reaction to the book.
She did, yeah. She actually got The Salt Path as a birthday gift.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and apparently the person who gave it to her described it as life-changing. And, well, by all accounts, it really was for her. It had a profound impact.
I can imagine.
So when the chance came to adapt it, she already felt this deep connection. And she worked really closely with the director, Marianne Elliott.
Okay.
Their focus was very much on capturing the emotional core, that deep bond between Raynor and Moth, but also recognizing the power of silence and the landscape itself. It's almost like another character.
The landscape as a character, that's a really beautiful way to think about it, especially given how central the physical walking, that environment, was to everything they went through. And the homelessness aspect, that was something they wanted to handle carefully too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Elliott specifically picked Lenkiewicz, partly because her previous work often uses quite sparse dialogue.
Oh, interesting.
She didn't just want a literal, word-for-word translation of the book onto screen. She wanted the film to have its own visual language, its own kind of emotional weight.
Makes sense.
And what's fascinating is how much trust Raynor Winn put in them. She basically said, it's yours now. It's a different genre. Find your own way with it.
Wow, that's a lot of freedom.
It is. And that kind of freedom, well, it's a gift, but it also brings a huge weight of responsibility, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. To get it right. It really sounds like it fostered a true partnership, though. Now, thinking about bringing Moth to life on screen, Jason Isaacs, he often plays these really intense guys.
Yeah, that's true.
What was it like for him taking on this role?
Well, it's interesting. Isaacs himself mentioned that. He said he often plays characters who are, intense rather than just inherently nice.
Right.
So playing Moth with that sort of quiet strength and vulnerability was something new for him, a compelling challenge. And he really valued the time he got to spend talking directly with Moth.
He spoke to Moth himself.
Yes, and he said Moth was just incredibly honest about everything, not just the physical stuff, but the internal battles too. Those moments where he genuinely felt like giving up.
That direct insight, getting Moth's inner world, that must have been completely invaluable for Isaacs.
Oh, for sure.
It's easy to just see the external challenges, isn't it?
Yeah.
But understanding those internal struggles, that adds such a crucial layer.
Precisely. And Isaacs was apparently really struck by Moth's ability to find humor, even when talking about really painful things. And that became a kind of guide for him, like a North Star for his performance. It helped him balance the emotional weight while still capturing that warmth and resilience in Moth.
Yeah.
The film really tries to find that balance, acknowledging the sadness, definitely, but ultimately focusing on that connection, that hope between Raynor and Moth.
That ability to find humor in darkness, that says so much about them, doesn't it? As people and as a couple.
It really does.
Now, Julianne Nicholson played Raynor. I heard Raynor Winn had a slightly surprising reaction when she was cast.
Yes, apparently so. Raynor mentioned being initially surprised, maybe because, she remembered herself during that time on the path as being, well, perhaps less glamorous than a Hollywood actress.
Fair enough.
But she was apparently deeply impressed by Julianne Nicholson's dedication, how completely she just immersed herself in the role and the whole experience of portraying Raynor on that walk.
That's great.
And it sounds like the collaboration on set, the bonds between the cast and crew, even the laughter they shared, that really contributed to the film's overall feeling.
It's always wonderful when you hear that, when that positive energy on set kind of seeps into the final film.
Definitely.
Now, adapting a memoir, something so personal, so internal, for film, which is so visual, that must present unique challenges. How did they tackle that? Moving from Raynor's thoughts to something you can show.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about adaptation, isn't it? The director, Marianne Elliott, she had a very clear vision from the start.
Okay.
She wanted the film to be visually driven, use the power of cinema, the images, to tell the story. And actually use fewer words deliberately.
Right, let the pictures talk.
Exactly. She saw those incredible landscapes they walked through, not just as background, but as a key way to convey their emotional journey, their psychological state.
Makes sense.
And her desire to tell a story centered on older protagonists, especially a woman, with this really deep connection to nature, it just aligned perfectly with the book.
So the film really leans into that visual storytelling, letting the scenery reflect their inner worlds rather than just relying on dialogue or voiceover.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about, pretty landscapes. The film really tries to delve into the psychological transformation they go through. It's not just ticking off the miles or the physical hardships.
Right.
Ultimately, at its heart, The Salt Path is a love story. It's about that unwavering bond between Raynor and Moth, how their connection becomes this anchor while everything else is falling apart around them.
Yeah.
Apparently, the opening theme is particularly powerful in capturing that initial shock and fear, that sort of primal survival instinct, mixed with this strange, unexpected sense of, well, almost euphoria or liberation.
That sounds incredibly intense. Capturing that raw emotion right from the start. It must have been, well, quite something for Raynor Winn herself to watch those difficult moments from her life reenacted.
Oh, definitely.
What was her reaction like seeing the finished film?
Understandably, yeah. Watching it for the first time was intense, very emotional for her. It brought back incredibly vivid memories, especially the trauma of leaving their home.
I can only imagine.
She's talked about how certain scenes just acted as triggers, bringing back emotions she'd tried really hard to, put away or process. And you get the sense that both Raynor and the filmmakers felt this really deep sense of responsibility to honor the truth of her story, to portray it with real sensitivity.
It's hard to even comprehend what that would be like, revisiting things so raw and personal in that format. It really speaks to her courage in sharing the story in the first place.
Absolutely.
And the filmmaker's taking on that weight. Now, thinking back to the book itself, Raynor's recall of the walk is just so incredibly detailed. Did she keep journals while they were walking?
Well, interestingly, no, not in the traditional sense. Raynor didn't keep a detailed diary or journal as they went.
Oh, way.
But Moth did make some notes, brief notes, apparently just in the margins of their Coast Path guidebook.
Ah, okay. What sort of things?
Mostly practical stuff, it sounds like. Campsites they stayed at, people they met, and probably quite importantly, given their situation, what they actually managed to eat each day.
So those small, almost functional notes became these little anchors for her memory when she came to write it all down later.
Exactly. Along with those notes, she relied on maps, obviously, and just her own memory, which she felt was actually sort of heightened by the whole intensity of the experience.
Right.
The sensory details, the feel of the wind and rain, the sounds of the sea, the smells, all of that was just deeply imprinted.
I bet.
And the interactions they had with people, too, both the kindness, which they did encounter, but also sometimes the harshness they faced as a homeless couple, that left a lasting mark.
Yeah, those human encounters, good and bad, must stand out.
Definitely. Raynor mentioned how people's reactions sometimes shifted dramatically once they realized their situation, and she reflected on how that long walk, that sustained physical effort, it kind of emptied her mind in a way, making those experiences feel more tangible, more memorable, maybe, than the sort of constant noise and distraction of normal everyday life.
That makes total sense. When you're stripped back to basics, just focusing on putting one foot in front of the other, your senses must sharpen, and those connections, or lack of connection with others, would feel incredibly significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, let's just touch on Moth's health.
No.
Because his initial prognosis was, well, it was dire, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very serious, yes.
Yet he lived for many years after that walk, really defying the odds. What did Raynor share about that? Any insights?
Well, it's a question that even doctors can't give a definitive answer to, apparently, but Raynor has certainly thought about it a lot. She mentions several possibilities that people speculate about. Maybe the extremely low-calorie diet they were forced onto. That's something being researched now for certain conditions.
Oh, okay.
Or just being constantly immersed in nature. Could the environment itself have played a part? And of course, you can't discount the sheer power of hope, can you? The will to keep going.
Those are all such compelling factors, and it just highlights that complex interplay between, our physical selves, our mental state, and our environment.
It really does. Raynor also mentions some of the newer research into things like neurotrophins.
Neurotrophins?
Yeah, they're proteins that help nerve cells grow and survive. And apparently, moderate exercise, like walking, can increase their levels. So maybe that offered some neuroprotective effect.
Fascinating.
But while she's clear there's no single simple explanation, her conclusion is quite profound in its simplicity. She basically said, it's a good idea to go for a walk.
Huh. A beautifully understated takeaway. But it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
About the often overlooked power of just moving, being in nature.
It really does.
So, as we've kind of walked through the story of the Salt Path and its journey to the screen, what are the core messages for you? The things that really linger?
Well, for me, I think it's the incredible resilience, isn't it? The human spirit's capacity to endure, find strength even after unimaginable loss.
Yeah.
And the profound, sometimes really unexpected healing power that comes from nature and from genuine human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And also just seeing the delicate art of taking such a deeply personal story and translating it for a different medium, for film, while trying hard to stay true to its heart.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how we might reframe our own big life challenges. Maybe by changing our environment, focusing on the absolute essentials like Raynor and Moth were forced to.
Mm-hmm.
Could taking our own kind of salt path, maybe even just metaphorically, unlock something really profound inside us?
That's a really powerful thought, isn't it? Something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. And if you've been intrigued by this discussion, well, we definitely recommend seeking out Raynor Winn's amazing book, The Salt Path.
Or the film adaptation.
Or the film, yes, which is coming out in UK cinemas on May 30th. Just immerse yourself in their extraordinary story and maybe reflect a little on your own journey and the unexpected paths it might just lead you down.